欢迎各位加入今天台北表演艺术中心的线上讲座。我们今天很荣幸要跟各位介绍的是这一次今年度在北艺严选当中所推出的舞蹈节目的其中一个作品，叫做《每件发生了还要发生的事》。Welcome everyone to this online talk by Taipei Performing Arts Center. Today we are going to introduce to you our new coming shows coming up in March called Everything That Happens and What Happens. And from now on, the whole conversations will be conducted in English. If you would like to listen to the live interpretations in Chinese, we do have another channel for this. So please switch to that channel if you want to listen to Chinese interpretation. And this time for this online talk, we are very honored and happy to have our directors and our dramaturg for this work to be with us online. Let me introduce you to them. And today we have our directors Heiner Goebbels as well as our dramaturg Matthias Mohr with us. So nice to see both of you online. Thank you for being with us. Would you like to say hi to our audience in Taiwan today?
Hi, I'm very happy to come back to Taipei. I've been there many times, and I'm looking forward to see this incredible building.
Thank you, Heiner. We are also looking forward to see you again in Taiwan in March. Now I switch to Matthias.
Yeah, hello also from my side. I'm very happy to be with you. I've been to Taipei also lately and have been also to the venue to see. It's incredible. So I think the people look fantastic in this new center.
Thank you for bringing this work to Taiwan. We are very excited about this, and a lot of people are already discussing about this new upcoming work. But first of all, my first question to both of you would be, how did you guys meet together, and what was the motivation or starting point for this show?
You want to start, Matthias?
Yes, I mean, Heiner and me, we are connected since a long time, actually. As a collaboration, I studied at a place where Heiner was directing a certain career of so-called applied theater sciences. So that's where we met, and since then it took us a long way to work together. Very fruitful and very inspiring work that then led to this new work now. And funnily, the last piece that has been shown in Taipei, where I was involved, was Stiftes Ding, which was somehow the first piece that Heiner and me collaborated in. And this new piece, Everything That Happened and Would Happen, is very much connected somehow from my perspective also to this work, which has been shown in Taipei, I think, 12 years ago. So it's a beautiful bow how we come together now back to Taiwan.
About the starting point of this work, what was your motivations or inspiration behind this whole work?
That's very difficult to say, but because such a piece, as usually, has many inspirational sources. The point for me to bring those sources together was the discovery of this book by Uretnik, which is called Europeana. But that was only an opportunity to work with the other medias in a way which I've never done before. It's for me a very singular piece, and it's definitely not staging this book. So if you have the idea of theater as being making visible a story or making visible a text, then it's already wrong. I never work like that. I consider all the different media of theater play or music theater play as a composition. And as a composition here, movements, images, set design, music, sounds, and text have a similar importance. And surprising relationship. And this is what I'm going to invite you to experience when you come to see this piece. You will not see something which you have seen already. You have to be ready and curious for an enter with a different relationship of what you are usually see in theater.
I think that would be very fascinating and refreshing for everyone in Taiwan. And when we read the introductions, I also often call this piece as a music theater. But I think that most people in Taiwan may not be familiar with the idea called music theater. Can you give us an introduction about what it is and how is it different from the conventional theater that we see in this setting?
Yeah, I already tried a little bit to describe that relationship between what we see and what we hear is quite independent. And you see, for example, dancers, moving bodies. You see set designs from many different origins. And you hear a text about political absurdities, so to speak. And it is maybe a text originally written on Europe, but you can easily translate it into your own experiences wherever you are in the world, wherever politics you are confronted with. But it's not a political piece in any classical sense. And at the same time, the music is not a composition which you can easily compare with an opera or with classical music. It's a reinvention of a relationship between words and sounds, music and movements.
You mentioned that the work is inspired or come from a book that is from Europe, and there are also a lot of layers within this work. Do you suggest the audience how to prepare themselves before coming into the theater for this piece?
Maybe they should just see the news. Just see the news.
Mm-hmm. Do you think that when they see the whole show, they should have their current affairs in mind?
Excuse me?
Do you think that the audience should have the current news or current affairs in mind when they come into the theater for this show?
No, they will even see the news in the show, actually. We make an intersection between the movements, the music, and the news of the day. Is actually happening in the performance itself.
It sounds like there are so many elements that put together in this performance and in this piece. I want to ask Matthias, how difficult was this to put into a show like this with so many layers? How do you produce this in the process? Were there any challenges or difficulties that you overcome?
Just taking up with what Matt said also about his approach in regards to the music theater. One very important element is that the hegemonies are questioned that are perhaps normally present in perhaps opera or classical music theater. So in this production, for example, the performers themselves, they also were part of the process of authoring, and they were also taking the role of inventing and bringing in their own ideas, connecting what you say, all of these layers, which is on the one hand this book of Patrick Goebbels, which is on the other hand also the beautiful scenography of Klaus Grünberg that was actually from another piece, which is called Europeras 1 and 2 from GH that reappears in this work. And there's also news that Heiner was referring to, which is a certain television program that It's called News, that shows news in an uncommented way. And for us, it was a very playful process actually to make clear those layers and make them also connect by themselves, listening to those layers and not so much putting an own idea there and then just fulfilling it, but more setting out this cosmos of those different texts or visuals or also music, of course, and let them also reconnect with themselves and then connect the dots. As Heiner said, it's also a process of composition. So it's a very playful process, actually, which is very joyful and which is very surprising. So the idea is also to be surprised through the whole process, which happened to us a lot, which is still happening actually as we will do it again and again. And we will also make changes or have made changes. And you will also be surprised to the actuality, perhaps, of the news that then reconnects to those elements. So it's never an ending process, but it's ongoing. And this is also the beauty of this piece, that there will always be new connections made.
I think that would be fascinating to see so many elements together on the stage with music and movements and moving images as well. Especially about music parts. Heiner has been known for making great music. I'm curious about for this piece, did you write, compose any new musics in the project in these shows, or are you taking classical music and then rearrange them into the show?
Actually, it was a very new way to produce this piece for me, very new, because I completely developed the music with the musicians, and maybe I should explain how we created this piece, because I made actually three tryouts before, one in Germany, one in Paris, and one in Hanoi in Vietnam. And we choose the crew, the cast for this piece in these different tryouts. And most of the musicians I found in Paris, but they didn't necessarily know each other. And so we created, so to speak, we created an ensemble of voices, musical voices, and together with them we created music. And I think it's very important that the audience knows that when they see the show, the music will be created in this very moment. Of course, we have a lot of appointments, arrangements, and structures to follow. We know what we are doing, but the music is actually being created in the very moment of this piece.
You mentioned you have to assemble from Germany, France, and Vietnam. So I'm so curious about this choice. Why did you make this choice to have musicians from three different locations to work together? Especially they may come from different backgrounds, and also they, as you mentioned before, they do not know each other beforehand. Why did you make this deliberate choice to have musicians from three different locations?
Not only the musicians, but also the dancers, the performers are from different countries. I think from 10 different countries, actually. And the reason for this is very simple. I wanted to be surprised myself. I don't want to make something which I have already in my mind before. Whenever I make a new piece, I want to be surprised by the result, and I start with with the research. And this is true for the piece, which was my first piece to present in Taiwan, Black on White. It was, I think, in 2003. Uh, and it is true for Stiftersdinge, which Matthias already mentioned. Um, in each piece, I never knew how it would look. I don't. I would be bored I create something which I have already in my head. I need a challenge and I need a surprise. And this was never as much true as in everything that happened and would happen.
So did you get surprised in the productions process?
In every performance, actually.
Wow, I think that would be very interesting to see. Based on the previous, yes, please.
This also has to do with the fact that these pieces, small pieces, they are very open to the location in which one. And I saw the Performing Arts Center in Taipei already when it was in construction. I saw it in 2016 because the first director, Austin Wang, he invited me to see the space, and then there was this long stop of the construction before it could be built. And but with the location, the piece is changing very much. When we played in a small venue or a large venue, and we reflect and we also are um, affiliated by the space in which we perform.
I'm glad you mentioned about the location because that leads to my next question to Matthias. Based on what I have seen on online in the previous shows in other locations in other countries, the show is presented in places like factories or outdoors or old warehouses turned into theater. How did the productions of the dramaturgies adapt to individual locations?
Yes, I would say that's also something that that always is very important in Heiner's pieces. As you just said, the space itself, the location itself, with its context, with its tensions and questions, is also a relevant partner in the whole composition. So it is always also a listening or a feeling or a taking respect for the space that we then adapt the pieces to. So the pieces are really always emotional. And for example, we played in where when the piece came out, the space was very deep and had also industrial atmosphere or architecture to it. So this was the beginning, but then on a later journey, it was also happening in more theatrical spaces, for example, the last time. And so we rearranged it. There were certain scenes actually also really redirected. So it's a very still transformative process, which takes the spaces for a relevant partner in the whole creative development.
And I know that previously this show is presented in a 120-minute versions, but this time the show in Taiwan will be 100 minutes. I'm just curious about how did you adapt it in the process, and was it difficult challenges, and what was the decisions to adapt into this version?
I think the experience with the piece and with the audience of a piece, um, we are very aware and we are very attentive. And I think um, we wanted to change the rhythm a little bit. So and I also wanted to reflect the power relations in a piece. Is a scene being built by everybody, or is it just created by an image? So it has to do with all these questions that we decided the best timing will be 1.5 hours or 100 minutes, because it is quite demanding, I think, for an audience. Um, in the sense that you see something you don't expect it. And so it is an invitation to think, and it is an invitation to experience. It is an invitation to make up your mind. And I think for this, now the timing is perfect. When Matthias compared it with Stifters Dinge, there is especially one point on which you can compare these very different pieces. Once a member of the audience told us after the show of Stifters Dinge, she said, "Finally, nobody on stage to tell me what to think." And I thought that was a big compliment for my intentions. And when we created everything that would happen, I kept this compliment in my mind, and I wanted to create a piece which doesn't tell you what to think, though there are people on stage. So there is this enormous freedom to make up your mind yourself with your own preferences and your own experiences. And you will have a different view than the American audience or than European audience. And I think that's why the role of the audience is so important for us. And that's why we're also accustomed to the size of the production in this way.
I think, yes, that's very important. Especially, I'm looking forward to how audience in Taiwan will resonate to what pieces or what segments in the show, because I think for everyone in the audience, they may see something that resonate with them because of the personal life experiences and also from the backgrounds, and maybe they will have different comments, maybe probably very different from the European audience or American audience. This show has been to different places, and now Taiwan is the latest step. I'm just curious, like, where is the next step?
Will be Paris.
Would it happen in a traditional theater sense, or it will happen again in an unconventional area?
Yeah, it happens again in a industrial space. It's called La Villette. I think it was a marketplace, and those are the perfect places. This piece would not work in an opera house. Definitely not.
I like it how it morphs into different forms and different versions in every locations. And I think for every locations, audience can always get the unique experience because of the locations and because of the atmosphere and how everyone contributes and responds to the show in different ways. I think there's a few questions that we see online proposed by the audience. The first question is a simple one, is a personal one. Well, they're asking about your impression about Taiwan or Taipei. Are there any differences you notice? Maybe before coming to Taiwan, you have certain impressions, and after you arrive in Taiwan, you've been to Taiwan several times already. What was the changes or that you noticed that is surprising to you or you didn't expect to happen in Taiwan? Maybe we start with Heiner.
Matthias?
Okay, I can start. As I said, I was in Taipei very recently because I was part of a jury for an arts prize, and this was a huge inspirational moment because I was able to get a focus or a glance into the very vivid performance and visual art scene in Taiwan, which was very impressive. And also the range of several institutions which are opening up or already are existing since years in Taipei, but also beyond. And what I found very striking, which is very connected to everything that happened and would happen, is how much also the art scene is dealing with the idea of history and how history is actually rebuilt, especially in regards to the Taiwanese history and the multifaceted layers of history, of course, the period of the White Terror and questions of migration, questions of, for example, also indigenous communities in Taiwan. So this density of discourse and how it is connected to the arts in Taiwan, and how it is also multi-perspective and polyphone, how we would say, also with a lot of different voices. This connects a lot to everything that happened, would happen. This question of how history is actually also built from different positions of power or not power, and how we can rewrite history together, how we can rethink it. I think this is something very, very interesting at this moment in Taiwan, and very much connected to this piece.
Thank you. How about Heiner? Are there anything that surprised you in Taipei?
Yes, I think it was, first of all, I completely agree with what Matthias already described so precisely. I was very impressed by the openness. I mean, when we think, for example, when I think of the performances which I made with surrogate cities in the metro station in 2018, we had each night we had thousands of people who were so open for an unusual music, and I would add to Matthias also the experience I had with nature. I had the chance to travel a little bit in Taipei, in Taiwan, which was one experience for me to do. I also like the food, and I met so many wonderful people in Taiwan and in Taipei, especially, that I'm very eager to come back.
Thank you. I would definitely recommend Matthias, when you come to Taipei next time, get out of city and see nature, just like Heiner did, because nature in Taiwan is definitely fascinating. Matthias, you're also an artistic director in the theater in Germany. It's called Radio Systems. Can you tell us about what kind of show that your theater program, and also what kind of show that you are open to receive and welcome?
Yes, of course, through my work also with Heiner, and we also were doing a festival a long time ago. I was very influenced through this idea of how to invite also the in-betweens, let's say. I'm not so much interested in shows that you could already put in categories, let's say. So this element of being surprised that Heiner described in the actual artistic work, I took it also for my curating as a guideline somehow to not put a vision, let's say, on top of a house and say, I will just invite something that fits into this vision, but perhaps in the best case, things that are surprising, that are not so easy to a category, that perhaps start as a music theater or as a concert even, and then they become an exhibition and then a lecture performance all in one evening, for example, and you get out and you don't know exactly how to call this. And this is for me the most generous and fruitful experiences that I'm looking for, and trying to also facilitate and trying to make a space that invites that, because of course, I don't know if you are a bit aware of the German cultural scene, but there is a lot of also, I would say, hegemonic ideas of culture, which is reproduced, and I'm trying to look a bit more in how to tackle these ideas of culture and how we can renegotiate with each other and go more to the margins than to the center. Let's say like this very shortly. But I'm also very much interested in artists from Taiwan, for example. I'm very much in talks also with artists from Taiwan, especially now as there has been built a relationship somehow to the country through the different moments. So it's very fruitful.
I think certainly that this show, everything that happens and would happen, do not belong to one category. It just definitely stand in between these different categories. Heiner, in this show, that you have some inspirations from the book that talks about the First World War. And in the process, did you find anything in that historical period that resonates or still reflects the current situations that we live in now?
Actually, it's a way of storytelling of the author, which he was very influenced by Gertrude Stein, by the American author Gertrude Stein, and he starts with the First World War in every chapter of his book, but he very easily and very quickly and very radical moves away to other phenomena of the 20th century. So don't expect that this will be an evening about the First World War. It will be mentioned, but you can easily compare also in the absurdity of the stories which Uretnik tells. You can compare it with North Koreans now fighting in Ukraine, or Donald Trump trying to buy Greenland. These are stories for Patrick Uretnik, for his humor also, and for the cruelty of the society in many countries. So there's not a specific story I would now highlight. It's more the perspective which he has, which gives us a freedom to make our own mind from what we hear right now. So we can compare even the historical situations which might occur in this performance. We can easily compare it with what's happening now.
I think so, because in this show that you also include some news footage from Euronews, from No Comment shows. I'm just curious that since that the show always morph into a different versions or different situations in different locations, is the news footage always the same, or do you change every time? And also, what was your criteria to select those news footages?
No, the news footage is always different. It's the footage of the day when we perform, or maybe a day before or 2 days before. And we don't make a big choice. We try what is just coming in, and we only try to find news from different continents. And maybe when we are in Taipei, maybe there's something happening in Asia or in so we don't know. We never know what's happening, and we don't comment it, because this is the strategy of this piece. We don't comment it. You, as a viewer, as a listener, you comment it in a very individual way. It's all about the individual freedom, I think, this piece. And also of pleasure, of aesthetics, of course, of like a new world of sounds, like which I was able to show you in Taichung. I was able to show the Taiwanese audience "A Delusion of the Fury" by Harry Partch, and it's this curiosity which we also want to share with an audience.
It reminds me of something, because Heiner, you mentioned that you want to give the audience the freedoms to interpret and understand the piece themselves. I'm just curious about, for the performers, how much freedom do they have when they try to perform on stage? Are there any improvisation it shows? Because you choose different news footage all the time. So do you notice that how they respond differently on stage?
No, they don't respond to the news because they want you to comment it, not from stage to comment it. But they had an incredible freedom in the creation of the piece. The piece was created by everybody. True for the musicians, true for the dancers, and then we collected these ideas and turned it into a structure. But that was the moment of the first freedom. a second freedom is now to reinvent it every night when you perform with each other. And you can see this pleasure. I think you can see this pleasure of them to improvise or to reinvent that.
I think for audience in Taiwan, you should definitely buy tickets for the two shows. But you probably see two different shows if you come on both nights in Taiwan. So before we go, are there anything you would like to tell our audience in Taiwan before they go into the theater? Maybe we start with Matthias.
Yes, perhaps just in regards to what Heiner just said, I think the beauty of the piece, and this is perhaps something also you can discover as an audience, is the relation between the performers on stage and between the performers on stage with each other, but also with the elements that they are engaging with. So there is a real, if you ask, is there improvisation, there is always a big, I would say, awareness for each other, for the objects that are dealt with, how they are put out of big cases and hung somewhere or shifted around, but also how my neighbor is doing something perhaps a bit slower or a bit faster than the last time. So I have to resonate with that and adapt. So the piece also has this element of collaboration. How do we collaborate? How do we also are aware for let's say the multiple rhythms which are existing at the same time, and how do we get into flow with each other and find a joy in the difference that we are also inhabiting in one space at the same time. So this is a very joyful thing that is happening in this piece, and yeah, I hope you will experience it that way.
We certainly look forward to the joy that we may experience in the theater. How about Heiner? Any last word before we go?
Yes, I think maybe I should make it clear that I'm not making pieces about something. When somebody comes and says, "What is your piece about?" then I'm already annoyed, yeah, because I make pieces, like pieces of art of different registers and media, and they are not about something, they are something. And this piece, and this is also a recommendation for an audience, is not to think all the time, oh, what it is about. No, think about what you hear, and think about what you enjoy and what you dislike. And this is at the end of the evening, is, I think, it's a richness we can share.
Fortunately, I didn't ask the question, what is it about? Otherwise, you'll be annoyed already.
Yeah.
Thank you for your times, and that's all the time that we have. And our shows in Taiwan will happen on March 8th and March 9th. Both happenings in Taipei Performing Arts Centers, and the tickets are now available on OpenTix. So if you're interested, please buy the tickets. Preferably for both shows, but you're going to see two different shows. 那今天时间有限的关系，我们在这边要告一段落。每件发生了还要发生的事，将在台湾3月8号、3月9号在台北表演艺术中心演出。那在3月8号的演出结束之后，我们也会邀请导演 Heiner 为我们进行演后座谈。希望到时候可以跟大家在台北表演艺术中心见面。谢谢大家。Thank you, Heiner. Thank you, Matthias.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.